We all recognize the habit, typing out a 3-paragraph text to explain why you can't make it to dinner, immediately clarifying your tone if you seem a little quiet, or offering 3 distinct reasons why you're setting a very basic boundary. On the surface, it looks like simple empathy. It feels like politeness. Underneath that instinct lies a hidden mechanism, psychological submission. It's a sophisticated way of apologizing for the space you take up. Welcome back to the channel. If you want to uncover the hidden psychological mechanics driving your daily life, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's look at why you actually feel the compulsion to do this. The constant urge to justify your actions is actually a symptom. It points directly to a poorly healed emotional wound. Every long-winded text or defensive explanation is, in reality, a quiet, desperate plea for permission to exist. To find the origin of this wound, we have to look back at early environments of emotional invalidation. Often children grow up in homes where their subjective experience is systematically disqualified by the adults around them. When a child expresses fear and is mocked, or shows anger and is immediately punished for being difficult, they absorb a brutal lesson. They learn that their natural feelings are inherently wrong, and that those emotions only have value if an external authority approves of them. To survive an environment like that without constant punishment or ridicule, the child develops a defense mechanism. They learn to over-explain. They figure out that if they can construct a perfectly rational argument for why they feel sad or angry, they might be spared. And that specific survival tactic comes with them right into adulthood. Decades later, that childhood belief operates like an invisible prison. The adult is left completely dependent on the understanding of the people around them. They cannot affirm their own internal reality without someone else nodding in agreement first. Carl Jung identified exactly what this habit does to the mind. He saw compulsive self-explanation as a clear symptom of a severe disconnection from the self. A healthy psyche has a core, the true self, and a functional center called the ego, which is meant to navigate the world. But in a person desperate for validation, that dynamic breaks down. The ego stops serving the inner self. Instead, it stretches and contorts outward, turning into a servant solely focused on securing external acceptance. This creates an ongoing internal betrayal. Day by day, the person stops listening to their own intuition. They start to doubt their own authentic motivations, until the connective tissue between who they are and how they act breaks entirely. Society usually praises this kind of self-abandonment. We call these people agreeable, accommodating, and easy to get along with. But that false harmony requires an immense amount of energy to maintain, resulting in a deep, neurotic emotional exhaustion. By treating the approval of others as the only metric for survival, the individual forfeits the authorship of their own life. They relegate themselves to being a minor character in someone else's story. Jung offered a way out through a concept he called individuation. This is the lifelong process by which a human being becomes who they are. To achieve this, a person has to confront the internal structures they inherited. They must identify the voices of childhood authority figures that still dictate their actions, and actively refuse to be a reflection of what those voices demand. Crossing this threshold is terrifying. Jung described it as wandering into the desert of inner solitude. It is the exact moment you first resist the urge to justify yourself, when you simply say no without giving a reason, and you are immediately hit with a disconcerting emptiness. Compulsive self-explanation functions as an anchor. It keeps the psyche tethered to external approval, ensuring that true psychological independence remains out of reach. Healing requires surviving that initial void left behind when validation is stripped away. On the other side of that void is a state of internal authority. This is the ability to validate your own subjective experience. You know what you feel, and you no longer require the approval of anyone else to make it real. Reaching this state requires pushing through intense anxiety. The first few times you refuse to explain a decision, the conditioned part of your brain will panic. It will beg you to fall back into submission, warning that people will abandon you if you don't justify your choices. Holding firm through that silence is a spiritual exercise. By refusing to give in to the panic, you shift the center of gravity within your psyche. You pull your energy away from the periphery and condense it back into a solid, unshakable inner core. When you reach this point, silence is no longer an absence of words. It is certainly not an act of arrogance. It becomes an active, rooted presence. It is the living proof that you owe no one an explanation to exist. Ceasing the cycle of explanation dissolves the old social hierarchy. You stop signaling your inferiority and begin to occupy your space with a quiet, unshakable presence. Almost immediately, manipulative people and unbalanced relationships begin to crumble. Emotional control requires vulnerability. It relies on your desperate need to be understood. When you withdraw that need, you become impossible to control. This brings you to a state of psychological integrity. An integrated person still communicates openly with the people they love. They express their truths and their feelings freely. The difference is, they no longer try to convince anyone that those truths are valid. When you stop begging for space, you stop negotiating your essence. You no longer ask for permission to take up room in the world. And that is the exact moment you finally begin to truly live.